the gathering up at Snowbird, we were able to boil it down, something that is pretty complex, yet boil it down into 4 values that are, I submit, don't need to change.
As we go over these values, it's important to keep in mind that the Agile Manifesto was trying to solve the persistent issues encountered with the Waterfall approach. Its aim was to shift the mindset of developers, development teams, and organizations towards a more productive and collaborative approach. The intention was to address the shortcomings of traditional approaches and foster a new way of working that promotes efficiency and teamwork. At the very top of the manifesto, it reads, "We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we've come to value." And then goes on to state the 4 values that are expressed through a comparison or a distinction between 2 things, where we give preference to one thing over the other. Finally, the manifesto explicitly states, which is often ignored, this sentence down here towards the bottom. That is, while there's value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Again, emphasizing the fact that there's still value on what's on the right. We just value what's on the left more. For instance, instead of simply stating that we value working software, we emphasize that we value working software above comprehensive documentation. And this value acknowledges that waterfall projects tend to place an excessive emphasis on comprehensive documentation, where more resources, more time, more importance, more attention are dedicated to documentation rather than software development.
What we want to do is, yes, document just enough. We're not saying that we will not have any documentation at all, but we are saying that we prioritize working software over all these comprehensive documentation.
And so we're looking, when we think about Agile and we think about the way that that influenced things, it took a process that had been heavily documented, that there were lots and lots of requirements, that it needed to be replicated. We needed to be able to duplicate things. And instead said, rather than spending a bunch of time and energy on documenting what this process is, let's spend our time and energy on actually creating something that works. That was a completely different way of approaching things and a very, very new way of approaching things. And it's highly, highly relevant in all kinds of other situations. It's not just specific to software.
As a quick side point, some critics of Agile have misrepresented this by saying Agile doesn't do documentation, which is false. Documentation has significance, but we can't forget that the ultimate objective is to produce functional software, not merely a collection of pristine binders of documentation. Let's look at another. We value individuals and interactions over processes and tools.
If you do one thing well, one of those, if you can only do one value, pick that one, because everything else will fall into place. Awesome people working together will create process to do something in a logical, pragmatic, somewhat repeatable manner. You'll invent your own product. You don't need to read it in a book.
Software development is not simply a matter of allocating resources. It can't be treated like a straightforward numbers game. Attempting to throw more developers at a project or try to accelerate timelines without considering the human factors won't work. There are many nuanced factors at play, including technical skills, team dynamics, and institutional knowledge. Simply hiring more or temporary developers won't guarantee faster results or success. Software development is complex work that depends on people and relationships, not just resource management.
Individuals and interactions, it's the people interacting with each other that's going to get the work done. So we want people to work together. Process and tools are important, right? But if you just have process and tool, nothing's going to get done. Right? But it's the individual interacting with each other that's going to get the work done.
The Agile Manifesto emphasizes individuals and interactions over process and tools. This deliberate word choice highlights the importance of recognizing individuals and their unique qualities rather than viewing team members as anonymous roles to fill. Agile asks us to focus on the specific individuals on the team, understand their technical skills, their business knowledge, strengths, communication styles, and how well they collaborate. Rather than focusing on job functions, Agile stresses supporting individuals and facilitating interactions and communication between them. Valuing individuals and their differences leads to an effective collaborative team. But again, this value is not saying process and tools are important. They are, but your individuals and how they interact is more important to the success of a project.
Again, another Agile value, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, took the whole industry by storm. Here was an industry, and most industries, that said, we've got this contract. This is what we've agreed to. We've agreed that you're going to deliver this at this time, and this is what it's going to do. All of a sudden, with the introduction of software and things being able to move faster, there was much more need to say, what does the customer actually want? And instead of locking all of us into a contract that may not actually serve the needs and make them happy, let's actually embrace the idea of negotiating over the course of the time that we're working together, so that there's a sense certainly of what we're hoping to deliver at the end of this, but that we infuse and launch the project with collaborating with the customer from the onset.
Rather than viewing contract negotiation as a mechanism to clearly define and limit requests, Agile emphasizes partnering with the customer. Success means collaborating with the business, not just providing a service or enabling a predetermined set of features. Ongoing collaboration and feedback are more important than a static contract used to limit changes. Agile values customer partnership and a shared understanding over a restrictive contract-based approach. Again, contracts are still important for an agreement. Agile is not suggesting that they're not, but the higher goal is a cooperative relationship in true customer collaboration. And finally, Agile values responding to change over following a plan.
The thing about a plan is they're made to be broken. You know, Mike Tyson had a quote, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face." And I think the key to that is the plan is just a guide to get you moving in the right direction, but you have to have the true ability to respond to change. For example, if there's a production issue, you want to be able to respond to that production issue. If there's a shift in focus where something becomes more important, you want to be able to shift your focus and respond to that change. You want to have that true ability to pivot without remorse.
Agile recognizes that change is inevitable. There will be new requirements, technologies, regulations, and other unforeseen changes. Rather than rigidly following an initial plan, Agile emphasizes responding to change. Teams are encouraged to be flexible and adapt to evolving needs. This value applies broadly beyond software development to any area where responsiveness is important. At its core, Agile is about embracing change. Combined, the values and principles help teams become adaptive, customer-centric, and able to respond to change. While the values describe what's important, the principles specify how to achieve the values. The principles provide guidance on the practices and mindsets required to deliver on the promise of Agile. The Agile principles specify practices and mindsets to guide teams in implementing the Agile values. They help translate the values into concrete actions and a way of working. Following the principles helps teams deliver on the promise of the values of Agile and become more adaptive, customer-centric, and responsive to change. The principles provide the how to achieve the goals outlined in the values. The first principle: our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. This principle means that the top priority for Agile teams is to deliver software that meets the customer's needs and provides value. It emphasizes early delivery of working software, incremental releases, and continuous feedback from the customer.
That kind of early feedback from real working software is invaluable, and it's worth being maybe a little afraid to show something so simple. But get over that fear, and you'll be rewarded with what I like to say, sneaking up in the answer, having more confidence going forward, and being able to essentially build that trust with the customer that you're very quickly developing exactly what they need.
Continuous delivery of valuable software is how Agile achieves customer satisfaction and provides business value. The key is working closely with the customer and releasing useful software early and often.
The goal of all business is to satisfy your customers. And the way Agile proposes that you do that is by continuous delivery. That means you're not going to say, we'll deliver something to you in 12 months. And at the end of that, you'll tell us whether you like it or not, whether it meets your requirements. This is about satisfying a customer along the way by giving them a piece of it along the way so that they can inspect it, look at it, make sure it's what they think they want. It saves time and energy with development teams because then they're not creating the wrong stuff. But all along the way, you're satisfying the customer so that they see how the progress is going and they are aware that continually they'll be not only updated on the process, but actually able to see something.
Next, welcoming changing requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. This means that Agile teams welcome change rather than sticking to an initial plan. Agile's flexible and can adapt to evolving customer needs. Changes are seen as opportunities to deliver value, not obstacles. Feedback is incorporated throughout the project, which allows for building the right software and meeting current needs. This principle underscores the fact that requirements often change, and Agile aims to respond to that change rather than resist it.
It's foolish to think you can project very far into the future what you're going to need and whether or not it's even necessary. And that's again, kind of getting back to trust that you can have interactions with folks along the way, and trust that, try to be humble about assuming you know. What I would say is the more the ideas and where you're headed is fuzzy and complex, or you need innovation, the more you need to take some of this advice even deeper or greater to heart, because we too often fall into the trap of treating something unknowable and complex as if it's just complicated, and think we know that we can just figure out every little step along the way, and that's often not true.
Deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference for the shorter timescale. Here, teams will have a bias towards shorter timescales for projects. By releasing software frequently in iterations, teams can obtain feedback early and often, accommodate those changing requirements, and reduce risk. Shorter timescales are preferred. However, a team has to determine what's a sustainable pace.
This goes a long way to, again, how the Agile frameworks are all built around continuous delivery and continuous feedback and breaking things down and being able to iterate quickly. So being able to deliver frequently is not only a shift in how work was delivered, it's also a mind shift in saying, we're not working on this for a long, long time. We're going to work on this for a little time and see what happens. And then we'll work on it for another little time and we'll see what happens. It just helps human beings break things up easier. It helps things be more manageable. And it helps continue to get better clients and better customer satisfaction because they're seeing the progress along the way because you're having these frequent interactions and they're able to tell you whether it's valuable or not.
The fourth principle: business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. This principle emphasizes close collaboration between business people and developers. It means that business representatives and developers work together regularly, communicating daily throughout a project. By collaborating closely, they can understand needs and constraints, clarify requirements, and make decisions together. This fosters a shared understanding and ownership of a project, and it allows for a more efficient response to change. Daily interaction helps break down silos, improves feedback, and helps developers build the right solution. The principle highlights the importance of direct communication and collaboration between stakeholders and the development team.
The principle around business people and developers working together daily, I think, came from a place of real separation. Historically, organizations were built around, these are all the VPs, these are all the business people, quote unquote, and these are all the developers over here. So business people tell the developers what they want and the developers build it. What this principle was saying was, rather than have it work that way, let's have more frequent interaction between those two parties. What's interesting is, I think, over the course of time, that wall has dissolved so much that we don't even really think about this anymore as being such a big piece of the principle necessarily. It means that business people and developers are working together in such a way that they are learning from each other along the way. So they're infusing the way the process works. And that's something, again, that the frameworks and have tactics around this. So if you're going to have a daily sprint meeting or a retrospective meeting or a sprint review meeting, you have the business in with the developers and everybody's talking about the progress to date. So you're working with those people much, much, much more consistently in a way that I think historically just didn't happen. And I think what the Agile Manifesto said was, this is an obvious problem. We've got to change this. And we've seen how that has changed over the course of time, because you've got developers now who are much more aware of the business value of what they're doing. And you've got business folks who have a much greater sense of how things actually get developed.
The fifth principle, build projects around motivated individuals. Give them an environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. Projects are built around individuals who are empowered to do what's right for the project. Rather than micromanaging teams, trust team members to get the work done. Motivation and trust in individuals' abilities enables better productivity and solutions. By giving team members what they need to succeed and trusting them to achieve goals, this principle fosters empowered, self-organizing teams. This leads to engaged individuals in higher quality work.
The thing about allowing your teams to self-organize, it allows them to gravitate towards what's important to them, but also what they might be really good at. A good example is COBOL. Back in the day, there were COBOL developers, and all they did was develop in COBOL. But whenever a new project came up, maybe a machine learning project or an artificial intelligence project, they didn't go to the COBOL developers, because in their mind, all they did was COBOL. But had they said, we have a machine learning project or an artificial intelligence project, and then allowed the COBOL programmer to gravitate towards that, you may find that your COBOL programmer is actually your best machine learning programmer.
The sixth principle, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. This principle emphasizes face-to-face communication as the most effective means of conveying information within a team. It means that direct in-person conversation is the optimal way for a development team to interact and share information. While other methods can be useful, they're limited in comparison to face-to-face interaction.
We've developed for gazillions of years as humans working face-to-face. Yeah, Zoom is way better than just the phone or an email. But being in person, there are things that we do as humans that communicate beyond communicating. For those complex, fuzzy ideas that require a lot of innovation, you can't beat, I don't think anyway, being in person.
This principle highlights the importance of direct interaction and dialogue in Agile teams. Value 7. Working software is the primary measure of progress. In essence, this principle means that the success of a software development project should be measured by the amount of working software that's produced, rather than just how complete or how finished a project might be. In other words, the focus should be on producing software that works and meets the customer's needs on an ongoing basis by incrementally adding value to the customer.
Does this actually work at the end of it? And that, again, was a relatively novel way of thinking about things back then, because progress had been around project management and around did we deliver the little bits of things that we said we were going to deliver? That doesn't matter unless at the end of it there is a working product that the customer actually wants.
Next, Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should all be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. This principle enables the continuous delivery of working software and an ongoing adaptation to change. To promote sustainability, this principle implies that teams should work at a pace that can be maintained without leading to burnout.
Sure, there's times when we might work harder and decide to do something maybe a little out of the ordinary, and it's often thrilling. But the key is you can't constantly be in a hair on fire type pace. That's just, that can lead to burnout, mistakes, losing people, attrition. It's certainly not good. And it's also a sign that maybe you're not as agile as you think you are. And maybe there's opportunities to learn what causes the need for, I think Ron Jeffries used a great term in his wonderful book. And one of the lines in there was whipping the ponies harder. And that's certainly not what we want to do. It does not yield more value out the door.
The Agile principle around sustainable work pace is one of the most popular with engineers. They had long felt as though it was just work. We can just add more hours, we can add more people, we can just keep working you to the ground, and it'll all work out. The reality, as we know now with lots of research since then, is there is a diminishing return on investment, that the human brain can only go so long. And this was what was also interesting, is in reaction to the way that software had been being developed, there was this idea that we'll just keep them, we'll hire people around the clock, and we'll hire people to work 12, 15, 16-hour shifts, and they'll be able to get this done. And when this group of people got together and said, it's not working, it doesn't happen. It's never mind, is it not motivating for people to think that they're just going to have to work a grind the entire time, but it also isn't getting us the product that we wanted. It was like everyone threw up their arms in glee and said, this is terrific. They're actually considering the fact that we need a sustainable work pace. We need to be able to say, this is how much time this is going to take, and I'm going to need breaks within it. I'm going to need ways to rejuvenate myself within it. I work better at different hours than other people work. This allowed a lot of that flexibility and a lot of that really motivating environment for developers.
One of the things that's really critical to look at is, how effective are you? You might be really, really busy. You might work double shifts. You might bring the team in on weekends. But how effective are you really? Oftentimes, there's potential waste in the system that if you recover the waste, and that's what we do a lot with teams when we work with teams, is we can find some things, maybe you might call it low-hanging fruit, but we can find some elements where you can gain a little elbow room, get a little breathing room, and by cutting out some wasteful processes. A lot of times people have what we would call too much whip, too much work in process, too many things started and not enough finished. And then that leads to maybe context switching, doing things that are wasteful. Can we be more effective? Can we work in a way that is valuing delivering over working excess.
A sustainable pace and process are necessary for the longevity of Agile projects and products. The ninth value, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. This principle means that consistently focusing on high-quality code and good design increases a team's agility. Technical excellence and good design make the code base maintainable, extendable, and adaptable to change. This speeds up development and reduces technical debt, allowing the team to be more responsive to new requirements. While Agile values working code over comprehensive documentation, this principle emphasizes that code quality and design are still crucial. They enable the team to be efficient and flexible in the long run.
So, traditionally, one thing we have seen when it comes to technical excellence is there was like a system architect, like a senior architect who would basically dictate the architecture and tell you how the architecture should be built. And based off of which the developers would just think about the components that they are going to build and work on them. Today, that has completely changed. Well, we still have architects, but what is more important is that each of the developers understands system design. Each of them is able to build the components, think through the system as a whole, and think about the dependencies and how one of these components or many of these components interact or affect the other areas in the system. This is extremely crucial because now when you're able to understand these and build them accordingly, you're sticking to certain coding standards across the org. So you're sticking to architecture principles across the org, because of which making a change in the code becomes easier. So when you build software and when someone else has to look at that and make a change, previously, if you look at all our legacy code today, it is an enormous feat to make that happen. It's very difficult to dig through the code and understand where to make a change. Versus today, because of this thinking, because of this ownership, each of one is able to stick to coding standards, coding practices, because of which each of the developers is using the same set of principles and same underlying architecture, because of which making changes has become a lot easier.
10. Simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. This suggests that teams focus on doing the simplest thing that could potentially work, avoiding unnecessary work. Maximizing the amount of work not done means making choices that reduce complexity and constraints. Agile teams should focus on delivering only what's necessary to meet the customer's needs, rather than trying to deliver everything that has been requested or envisioned. This requires constant communication with the customer to understand their needs and priorities and the ability to adapt to changing requirements and circumstances.
And believe it or not, we all do Agile in real life. But when it comes to work, we don't think Agile. Because we're so used to the way we were doing work, we don't relate that we're actually doing Agile in real life. I give you an example. I came home one day and my daughter was having a party and there were like dishes all piled up and they need dishes. And she said, Daddy, I don't know how I'm going to get all these dishes done. Right? Because she was thinking she had to wash all 50 dishes in one time. I said, let's be agile. I show how to get it done really quick. I wash 5 dishes, I rinse. Then I wash 5 dishes, I rinse. Then I wash 5 dishes, I rinse. Right? I'm actually delivering value early and frequently. Right? But then she said, yeah, but Daddy, look, every time you rinse, we were washing dishes manually. Right? Every time you rinse, you have to, make sure you have to clean your head, rinse your hand, and they're going to put more soap, right? More detergent. Well, I said, that's the transaction cost. If you want to do all 50 dishes at one time, right, then you have to have a lot of holding costs, right? So it's like, hey, Daddy, so how do I know how many dishes I should do at a time? Well, you have to try it and see where the sweet spot is. You want to do one at a time? You probably don't want to do one at a time, right? That's going to be a lot of transaction costs, right? And you probably maybe you want to do 10, and then you realize they need dishes quicker than the time that you need to wash 10 dishes. So maybe it could be 3, it could be 5, it could be 6.
It resonates with getting to the essence, with how I talk about sneaking up on the answer, with, you might be shocked at how small of a feature I can deliver. And that's adding the some words to expressing your humility by trying to simplify what you do less than you think you need to, and get feedback sooner.
Simplicity enables teams to be more efficient and responsive to change. It leads to lighter processes, less documentation, and a focus on high-value work. By emphasizing simplicity, Agile teams can reduce the risk of failure, improve the quality of the software, and increase the speed of delivery. 11. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Rather than being dictated by management, teams determine the solutions and structures that work best for them. By self-organizing, teams can make decentralized decisions and tap into the diverse perspectives of team members. This fosters innovation and better designs, as well as a greater team buy-in and ownership. Finally, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly.
When we go on to our next project or our next assignment or the next set of features to build or the next release, the next increment to work on, what we think of is, let's pause. Let's just pause, take a minute and reflect. And what we do in this activity is to literally take a pause. Hit that pause button and be like, all right, what are we doing? How's it going? How has it gone so far? Is everything going the way we planned? No? Let's think about it. How to adapt, how to change. Is there anything we can do better? Is there anything we can improve? Whether that is, coding standards, whether that is the way we work, the way we operate, our ways of working, our processes, anything that is. Just reflect together as a team and understand what it is that we could do to get better.
The principle suggests that feedback and learning are built into the process, allowing teams to be self-optimizing and enhance their agility and effectiveness. Is Agile a methodology? Well, many in the Agile community avoid using the term methodology because it poses some problems. The Agile Manifesto doesn't aim to be prescriptive or offer a rigid methodology that teams are expected to adhere to. The intention is to move away from that idea that following a specific process or methodology will solve all the problems. This is a fundamental value of Agile, which emphasizes the need to break free from the notion that external methodologies are the solution to software development challenges.
I would say the Agile Manifesto describes a new ways of working. It's really a mindset, right? It's not a methodology. It doesn't tell you how to do stuff, right? But it tells you what is important.
But ultimately, Agile is simply a philosophy, such like martial arts or like yoga, where there's not really an end in sight as much as there's a way of being with the work and a way of being with the teams that produces more valuable work.
Despite the emphasis on flexibility in Agile, processes are still crucial. Some teams may require some additional structure, leading many organizations to adopt Agile frameworks such as Scrum, XP, Kanban, or Crystal. These frameworks align with the Agile values and principles, but offer specific guidelines and practices for planning meetings, communication, workload distribution, and feature tracking. However, these frameworks also avoid being called methodologies and refer to themselves as Agile frameworks, to emphasize that they don't offer a rigid set of instructions to follow. Instead, they seek to support the Agile mindset that aims to change the way software and products are developed. Agile and Agile frameworks work in conjunction with one another. Agile's focus is on an organizational level, requiring leadership and culture buy-in to adopt the Agile mindset, whereas Agile frameworks are implemented at the team level. The two most widely used Agile frameworks are Scrum and Kanban, and they share a common goal of simplifying the development process, breaking down complex tasks through iteration, testing, and launching new products. However, they differ in how they execute those processes. At its core, Scrum promotes teamwork, communication, and adaptability. It breaks down projects into smaller chunks called sprints, usually lasting a few weeks. Scrum puts an emphasis on self-organization. The team decides how to tackle the tasks and how much they can handle in each sprint. It gives them the freedom to be creative and take ownership of their work. Scrum consists of several core components that work together to enable effective management and collaboration. These components include 3 key roles and activities referred to as ceremonies or events. First, let's take a look at the roles. We have a product owner.
The product owner's primary focus is to maximize the return on investment. And what is the investment? The developers, which is the team, right? Their bandwidth, right? So how are we going to utilize their bandwidth? We want to maximize their bandwidth and deliver something that's usable, that's more valuable.
The product owner is responsible for representing the interests of stakeholders and ensuring that the product or project delivers maximum value. They define and prioritize the product backlog. They communicate requirements to the development team, and they make decisions regarding the product.
And then there is the Scrum Master or the facilitator or servant leader, sometimes called the team coach. They're there to make sure that the team relentlessly improves.
Scrum Master is the servant leader for the team. And the Scrum Master is there to pave the way for the team's success, right? When I try to explain servant leadership, right, I like to explain it in terms of partnership. Right? If you're a parent, if you have kids, automatically you're a servant leader. You know more than your kids, but you're there to serve them. And you're there to guide them to maturity so they can be independent, right? You don't do the work for them, right? If your kids have a problem, the school problem, right? The homework, daddy, mom, I don't know how to do the homework. Let me do it for you, son. You don't do that, right? Same thing with a Scrum Master. If the team's got impediments, you try to help them remove the impediment, right? But you also want to guide them to success. You don't do the work for them. So the Scrum Master is there to help the team mature the Scrum, understanding the Scrum process, the Scrum framework.
The Scrum Master acts as a facilitator and coach for the Scrum team. They help the team understand and implement Scrum principles. They remove any obstacles or barriers that may hinder progress, and they promote a productive and collaborative work environment. The development team is a self-organizing, cross-functional group responsible for delivering the software or the product.
The team collaboratively works on the tasks defined in the sprint backlog, deciding how to complete them and ensuring quality output. Scrum also defines several events or ceremonies that are designed to structure and facilitate the iterative development process. These events provide opportunities for collaboration, inspection, and adaptation within the Scrum framework. There's 5 ceremonies or events. There's a sprint, sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, and a sprint retrospective.
The first ceremony or event that we'll talk about is a sprint.
A sprint is a time box, a box of time. It generally can be 2 weeks. When Agile first started, they were about a month, the first day of the month and the last day of the month. But nowadays, companies are going with generally about 2 weeks for Scrum. Flow-based teams, a sprint or time box is generally about a week.
A sprint is just the Scrum word for an iteration.
During each sprint, the team focuses on a set of specific tasks known as the backlog or product backlog that they need to complete. The backlog is the overall list of items that represent the desired functionality, enhancements, and fixes for the software or product. Sometimes the items on the backlog will be surfaced as something called user stories. User stories represent individual features or functionality from the perspective of the user or customer. The backlog serves as a guide for the team's work, and it evolves and gets refined over time as new information emerges.
The next ceremony is sprint planning. At the start of each sprint, the team holds a sprint planning meeting. They review the product backlog, select the items to work on during the sprint, and define clear goals and a plan for achieving those goals.
A lot of people think that in Agile, we don't do planning, right? But we do planning. We do more frequent planning, but we plan them in small bites, every iteration. So sprint planning is when the team and the product owner, facilitated by the Scrum Master, they get together and they plan work for the sprint. Like for a 4-week sprint, you will have 8-hour planning, and then for 2-week sprint, you'll have 4-hour planning. For a lot of companies, they just cut it down to like 1 hour. Right? It's all planning. But usually, if you want to really get some value of the sprint planning, you should allocate enough time for them to also ask last-minute questions, and then create tasks, and then team will actually assign work to themselves.
Next, we have a daily stand-up. The daily stand-up is a short daily meeting where the team members provide updates on their progress, discuss any obstacles, and align their activities. It promotes transparency, communication, and helps the team stay focused and coordinated.
A daily stand-up is a ceremony or an event for the team to get together to plan work for the next 24 hours. They actually answer 3 questions, like what did you do yesterday, what do you plan to do today, and if you have any impediments. And mature teams don't answer these 3 questions. They just get together, and because they are so organized, they know exactly what they need to do and what information my team members need in order to get the work done.
The next ceremony is a sprint review. At the end of each sprint, the team conducts a sprint review meeting. They showcase the work completed during the sprint to stakeholders. They gather feedback and they discuss any potential changes or adaptations to future sprints. Finally, there's the sprint retrospective.
I actually asked another coach, a friend of mine, I asked him which ceremony or Agile event in Scrum is the most important. And he said sprint planning is the most important. And I disagree with him. I said the retrospective is the most important one. And he asked me why. I said, because if you don't do sprint planning, you will realize that you didn't do it and you need to do it in the retrospective. Retrospective is for the team to come together, find ways to improve their ways of working. A sprint review is to inspect the outcome of the sprint, the deliverable, right? The product that you're building, right? And you get feedback from the customer. Now, the retrospective is for the team to find how we can improve our ways of working, our process.
The sprint retrospective is a meeting held after the sprint review. The team reflects on their performance, identifies what went well and what could be improved, and they collectively decide on action items to enhance their effectiveness in future sprints. These core components of Scrum provide a framework for iterative development, collaboration, and continuous improvement. It enables teams to deliver value and adapt to changing requirements throughout the project. Kanban is another Agile framework that focuses on visualizing work, limiting work in progress or WIP, and optimizing workflow efficiency.
Kanban. So Kanban is actually Japanese for billboard, and it's a visualization. So when we say Kanban in agility terms, we're talking about the visualization of the work. But there's also a Kanban kind of a framework that allows a way of delivering using this Kanban board, and it's flow-based. And it's from lean manufacturing. I think it was Japan, the Toyota factory, how they were able to flow work in, parts into the factory and cars out of the factory. And that's what they use, is that Kanban technique of visualization of where the bottlenecks are and then resolving the bottlenecks.
At its core, Kanban revolves around a visual board that represents the workflow of a project or process. The board is typically divided into columns that represent different stages or steps of work. Each column contains individual cards or sticky notes that represent specific tasks or work items. The basic principles of Kanban include visualizing workflow. The Kanban board visually represents the entire workflow, allowing team members to see the status of each task or work item at a glance. It provides transparency and clarity about what needs to be done, what's in progress, and what has been completed.
Kanban will also limit the work in progress, or WIP.
A WIP limit is basically a way for you to remove bottlenecks by minimize what you're working on at the same time. There's a term called boiling the ocean, doing everything at once. But a WIP limit allows you to say to yourself, what are we going to have at maximum in progress at the same time? So by setting that limit, that's the first step. So if you say, I'm only going to work on 3 things, as soon as you finish one thing, you bring in another thing, but you don't work on anything else until one of those 3 things is completed.
This helps prevent overloading individuals or the team as a whole, ensuring that work is completed before new items are started. WIP limits encourage focus, efficiency, and faster delivery of tasks.
It also provides flow management. Kanban promotes the smooth flow of work through different stages of the workflow. It aims to minimize bottlenecks, delays, and idle time. By identifying and resolving impediments, the team can optimize the flow, reducing cycle times and increasing overall productivity.
Continuous improvement is another core tenet of Kanban. Kanban encourages a culture of continuous improvement. Team members regularly reflect on their workflow and identify areas for improvement. They can experiment with changes to the process, evaluate their impact, and adjust accordingly. This iterative approach helps the team evolve and enhance their productivity over time. Kanban offers flexibility, adaptability, and a visual framework for teams to manage their work effectively and optimize productivity, and continually improve their process. Achieving a successful Agile transformation requires careful planning, commitment, and a holistic approach.
First, let's compare the structure of a traditional organization compared to an Agile organization. Historically speaking, organizations are grouped in siloed teams, meaning there's a sales team, a marketing team, a development team, and so on. There's little cooperation between them, and they generally focus on their own priorities. There's also a formal hierarchy, and this hierarchy operates through linear planning and control. It's shaped like a pyramid where power and decision-making is isolated towards the top. All of this can slow down the process of delivering value to the customer. This traditional model can work for some enterprises, but in a general sense, there are challenges around this type of organization's ability to adapt to change. An Agile organization operates in a very different manner. Its focus is different from a traditional model. The traditional hierarchy is completely removed. Teams are built with end-to-end responsibilities from a variety of different job functions. They work on smaller but complete projects, and customer interaction is at the center of what they do. Agile teams are small, allowing for better communication.
A phrase that's used often is you can feed the team with 2 pizza pies. So it's a certain number of people. You really want to make it 7 to 12, give or take. But I think the key is you want to have those conversations that allow you to come up with consensus quickly and move together forward in a nimble type group. So an Agile team is just going to be a cross-functional team where everybody can do everything, not everyone per se, but some team members have the ability to help other team members. So if someone gets sick or, you account for people being able to at least go on holiday or go on vacations, and that enables you to be kind of a moving together as a group team where the focus is on the whole as opposed to the individual.
Agile thrives with empowered teams. You want your teams to be autonomous. You want them to be able to make their own decisions. It's important to establish an environment where teams can self-organize, take ownership of their work, and collaborate effectively. Effective communication and collaboration are critical. Encourage open and transparent communication channels among team members, stakeholders, leadership, really anyone involved within the organization. You want to foster that trust and that alignment, and you want a shared understanding of that throughout the organization.
When considering an agile transformation, it's important to embrace the mindset throughout the entire organization. You certainly can implement agile behaviors which may lead to improvement, but there's a distinct difference between agile adoption and agile transformation. We'll take a look at that next.
One piece of advice that I would give anyone would be, hey, if you want to do this right, the first thing is to start with you. It all starts with you. Before you take it to your teams or organizations, start with you. It's a mindset change. Start thinking differently. Start appreciating all of these principles and ideas and truly reflect on the inner meaning. And that is when you will understand that Agile is so much more than a process or practice. It is a way of working. It is culture that is proven to excel.
Okay, so there's a big war going on between doing Agile and being Agile. A lot of people will just schedule all the meetings, have the same agenda, and we're doing Agile, yay. But the thing about being Agile is like we keep constantly bringing up, and it's around responding to change, being ready for change, having that mindset of, I know we have this thing that we're working on, but we should be prepared in case something more important comes up. And that's why we work in small batches.
Every company wants to become Agile, but somewhere they fall into the trap of Agile, which means they're still doing Waterfall, except they now have new roles, new titles, they call it Agile, and they do a little bit of both worlds.
A lack of commitment may result in something called agile adoption, which is very different from a true agile transformation. So what is an adoption? It's a change in business process, and that change is consistent with agile values and principles, and typically an agile adoption lives within a single team or department. An agile adoption is something that can be quickly implemented with minimal disruption. There are certain benefits of an agile adoption. There's improved communication and visibility into what each team member is working on, and you may even find some performance improvements. Working this way is sometimes referred to as doing agile opposed to being agile. An agile transformation is at the enterprise level, and that change impacts the entire organization. The entire organization must embrace the mindset of agile.
So what I would say is it starts with coming to a tipping point, coming to a point where you realize the way you're currently working, the way your teams are currently delivering isn't sustainable and hasn't felt successful. So at that point, you start to identify what is important to you, like what's important to your organization. You identify these quantifiable things that are quantifiable, like we expect to have defects at X%, or we expect to release software X times, within a certain period. And once you get those things itemized, once you get those things understood, the next thing is to start to talk about how you're going to transform. And the way you're going to transform is going to be generally using more of an agile mindset, because what happens is when the teams are all working independently, if you hold up them working together, you can't see through it. But if you can coordinate all those teams, have those teams all work on the same cadence, that enables you to coordinate change and also deliver small increments of value.
There needs to be a cultural shift. Agile is not just a process. It often requires a cultural shift within the organization. You want to encourage collaboration, transparency, and a growth mindset. All of this is essential.
From there, you start to think about which teams are probably ripe for being the first to move into an agile way of working. It's generally your high performers. You want to do that first because you want to see why they're high performing, but you also want to do your what I call the bell curve performers. The teams that are very predictable in what they deliver. They're able to plan and push things to production with not a lot of issues. You want to try and get them on a cadence, because by getting them on a cadence, you allow yourself to create that blueprint for what you feel all the other teams should follow.
This will not happen overnight. This is going to take some time. Why? Because this is a mindset shift. The ultimate goal of Agile, it is really the mindset shift. You should be able to think differently. You should be able to approach things with openness. What you're thinking about is how the teams should operate. You're clearly going to change the operating model of each of these teams, which means you're going to also change the culture on the teams. An example here would be a developer may say, hey, I'm here to write this code. I'm here to deliver this. That's about it. I'm done with my job. No, you are going to change that mindset. What you have to help them understand is they're not here to simply write a piece of code and deliver that. What we want them to do is to solve a business problem. Now, what that means is they should be able to understand and empathize with our customers. Hey, this is a business problem that we need solutions for. As a developer, what do you think that you could do?
Traditional performance metrics that focus solely on individual productivity probably won't align with the Agile values. Rethink incentives and metrics to promote collaboration, teamwork, and outcomes that drive customer value.
Be able to set up a center of excellence. We want to set up an Agile center of excellence where minds come together, people come together, talk about agility, talk about the transformation, talk about the plans in building this new operating model. Once we have this new operating model in mind, that is when we think about launching. How do we launch this? We don't launch this all at once. It's not like, hey, now I have 10 teams, go do Agile. That's not how this is going to work. We want co-pilots to be launched. So we are going to take, let's say, a set of teams. We identify few teams and then say, hey, this is what we want to launch there. And we are going to devote the roles that we earlier talked about, the Scrum Master or the Agile coach, who are going to facilitate and make sure the team is adhering to these principles. And then practices, and then processes. We ensure that these things are happening. For them to happen, we build this thinking and encourage this thinking and launch these teams.
An Agile transformation is an ongoing process. Organizations have to continuously adapt, learn from experience, and adjust Agile practices accordingly.
Thank you so much for joining me on this journey about Agile. I hope you now have a clear understanding of what Agile is and what the purpose was behind the manifesto. At this point, you might have a deeper interest on how to transform your organization or learn more about Agile frameworks and approaches. I'd encourage you to explore Pluralsight skills, as we have several courses to expand your knowledge in all of these areas, from implementation to the most popular frameworks. Again, I'm Matthew Peasy,